Hi, Misha here, and if you see the title of this video, which you do, and you saw my previous video on ties, you know I lied to you, but it was inadvertent. I said in that video I probably wouldn't be picking up one of the titanium tie defenders. Well, one came around for a decent price in the package, and I found a few bucks in an old PayPal wallet that didn't know I even had, so it kind of felt like free money. So I thought, what the hey, why not get one to round out the tie fleet? And an interesting thing about the Defender, when this model, toy, diecast, what have you, was made, this was Expanded Universe. First featured in 1994's game TIE Fighter, but it appeared in lots of books and things since then. However, beginning in 2014 with Disney, it started to become actually canon, first with games like Battlefield, but then Rebels, the series, specifically in Season 3. And the two accounts don't perfectly line up, but I thought I'd combine them and kind of give you my best approximation, get some headcanon here, and some fun. So yeah, let's do that. Want to do that? Let's do that. In the other tie video, I talked about the experimental prototype series. This is the TIE V1, and this is the TIE X1. These are both considered TIE advances. The V1 was used by the Inquisitors and other elite forces. It had some basic shielding and hyperdrive, but it also had folding wings to make it easier to get in small areas, whereas the TIE Advanced that Vader flew was a little more capable, large scale, had a faster hyperdrive, still slow but faster, and yeah, just a little more robust ship. Not as fast, but robust. And while these never went into really big production, I mean, they made probably a few thousand of each, but for a galaxy that's tiny, it did lead to the TIE Interceptor here, which not only was put into full production, but was actually kind of slated to replace most standard TIE fighters, which it was on the way to doing at the Battle of Endor. So the TIE Defender here is an interesting take. It's from Sinar Fleet Systems, as the rest, and it began with Grand Admiral Thrawn before the Civil War really started. The advanced program dated back to at least 5 BBY, and this dated to at least 3 or maybe 2 BBY. And it was designed to kind of combat the rebels with their hyperdrive equipped ships, like the Y-Wing and a few others, and to go a different tack. Instead of having swarm approach with cheap TIE fighters, this was meant to replace 4, maybe even more, TIE fighters with one fighter. A standard TIE squadron could be 16, whereas this was a standard squadron of 4. The flip side, the standard TIE cost around 60,000 credits. The TIE Defender cost around 300,000 credits. So was it worth it? Well, not only Thrawn thought so, but Grand Moff Tarkin did. This is before he kind of took over the Death Star. As did Emperor Palpatine, and even Lord Vader. This was kind of a competing project. Instead of having the one big Death Star, it's like, hey, how do we use that money and build a lot of good starfighters? This was designed primarily as a space superiority fighter, with a secondary role as an interceptor and light bomber. And the specs are quite impressive. It's about 9.2 meters long, twin ion engines in the back, but it also has additional thrust from nozzles on the wings, the pylons, to kind of give additional maneuverability. It has the solar panels, 3 of them, plus it has an internal fuel cell. Weapons, it has, at least at the beginning, 6 heavy laser cannons and 2 ordnance launchers. Now the laser cannons are on the wingtips, and the dots in front of the canopy, which were once the lasers on the TIE, are now your ordnance launchers. Standard was 4 concussion missiles per launcher, so 8, or 3 proton torpedoes, so a total of 6. Not bad. It also had front and rear shielding, and it had speed. Oh, did it have speed. Originally, it was about 1600 to 1640 kph in atmosphere, so faster than pretty much anything, and it was just a more durable design. And if that's not enough, it was fitted with a Class 2 hyperdrive, which is actually faster than the TIE Advanced, and had enough consumables for the pilot for a week, so it could go for pretty long-range missions. Interestingly, though, it still did not have an atmosphere in this here ball, so you had to wear the flight suit. So imagine being in a spacesuit for a week. If that's not enough, it could also be fitted with a miniaturized tractor beam from the TIE Advance program. At least work had begun with it, although this was not always standard. It was optional. On top of that, we have a total of 3 sensor arrays, 1 on each wing, plus various other computers, and it can store up to 10 jump calculations, jump coordinates, because obviously we're not using an astromech, so yeah, we have to kind of pre-program. So yeah, Theron was working on this at kind of a secret research base with the first prototype ready in 2 BBY, and one of its earliest missions was an effort to capture Mon Mothma, and other shenanigans ensued in Rebels there. A couple prototypes were made, and they were lost, but they proved, even though there's just one of them at a time, to be a very capable craft. But about 1 BBY, the production facility, and it was slated for full production, was severely damaged, and therefore, with the Death Star nearing completion, this program was suspended. It's worth pointing out that Darth Vader liked the original TIE Defender prototype, or TIE-D, but he wanted it to be faster, have heavier armament, and to have more simplified, intuitive controls inside. So they gave it the ability to mount 6 more concussion missiles externally, kind of 2 on each wing pylon, and the speed was increased up to 1680 kph. But again, the program was kind of and that's where Rebels ends. But this die-cast model ship toy is not really based on the Rebels. This is based on the original TIE Fighter game version. Now, a couple of things. It is a good size, and the ball here is metal, the pylons are metal, but the panels, wings are plastic. One neat thing that it does do is these fold it down like so. And that was done in universe, so they could use the standard tie racks on aboard Star Destroyers. The pilot would still enter from the top there in the gap, and they didn't stick up. And also, yes, I'm aware that this lower down here is kind of warped. That seems to be just an artifact of the packaging, especially when they're left in for 10 years. But I did put a model clamp on it just to see if I could straighten it out, and I can very easily without breaking it. So what I'm going to do is heat it and clamp it maybe overnight, and it should hold shape. I clamped it without heating it just to see if I could, and it held shape for a bit, but it needs to be heated to kind of let the this kind of soft, rubbery plastic take the new form. But again, that's something I've read is just what these do. Another thing, because of the weird shape, the stand here in the back is permanent. It does unplug from the base, but I can understand why it would have been hard for them to make a standard stand work for this, so be it. Without many TIE Defenders out there to choose from, especially not for reasonable prices, with the action fleets being what they are, you can make your own call. So, this appears in the game. In the game, Grand Admiral Dmitry Zarin is kind of the architect of the program, although Thrawn is involved in it too. So we can say that after the Battle of Yavin, the TIE Defender, the TIE D, was restarted because of the loss of the Death Star and the appearance of the X-Wing. And prototypes were built under the TIE Advanced X7 name. And the earliest ones really lacked a lot of the components, including the hyperdrive, and a few, 3 or 4, were available for the Battle of Hoth for testing, but again, they were only partially complete without all features. But since they were considered a success there, full features were stated for production, and production was started up, and the first 6 production models were presented to Emperor Palpatine at Coruscant after the Battle of Hoth. At least that was the idea. In reality, Admiral Zarin thought, hey, I want to rebel. Now, what's funny is he didn't join the rebellion. He did his own thing. Brave man. Didn't work out well because Thrawn was on the Emperor's side. And, well, there you go. It's a whole thing in the game. But yeah, it was basically TIE Defender versus TIE Defender. Then the Empire had the missile boat. And yeah. But these proved pretty versatile and hard to kill, but also that goes for both sides. The only real difference between this version and the one from Rebels and the original one had 6 heavy laser cannons. This has 4 heavy lasers on each of the lowers, and the uppers here have 2 medium ion cannons, which makes a lot more sense, frankly. Why do you need 6 lasers? The ions give you a little more versatility. It also could mount an updated small tractor beam. It had kind of updated engines, kind of integrating the TIE Defender Elite advancements. And it still had the ordnance launchers, and now they could carry things like mag pulse warheads, even space bombs if you really wanted to. These were very effective. The rebels would call them trips, and both sides would sometimes call them X-Wing killers because they were faster, had really good shields, and were very heavily armed, and pretty heavily armored for what they were. But they were expensive. So while full production was started by 4 ABY before Endor, not many were made. It seems maybe about 10,000 were built, which seems big, but then you consider 25,000 Star Destroyers were built. So there wouldn't even be 1 for every 2 Star Destroyers. A few squadrons were formed, usually elite. In fact, they would usually get pilots from the TIE Interceptor program, ones that had survived 20 missions or more, had a good record, especially loyal, because the Empire was still real skittish about giving hyperdrives to pilots. So that was a thing. At Endor, you had Onyx Squadron flying the TIE Defender, but there were only a few squads there, and they were inconsequential. They punched above their weight, but not enough to change the battle. They should have shot down that 1 A-Wing. Moving on to 5 ABY, you had the Battle of Jakku, and a handful of TIE Defenders were there too. But after Endor and the fragmentation of the Empire, they no longer could afford the price tag for the TIE Defender, or really had the facilities to use them. But the ones that existed were continually used. They were found to be great for patrolling long range on the borders of the Imperial Remnant. Also for kind of hit-and-run strikes on New Republic convoys shipping even light warships, because these were effective light bombers. And these were used quite heavily, up to at least 9 or 10 ABY. Then the numbers and repair. But they actually proved, even though they were very advanced, to be pretty durable craft, because, at least according to legends, these were being used upwards of 50 ABY, meaning that even though production had ended over 40 years previous, many were kept flying. I don't know, interesting craft. And the fact that it is technically Canon now kind of gave me the excuse to go ahead and add one. The model is a toy, whatever you want to call it. Is nice enough. Obviously, I wish the wings were metal, but I think if they'd done that, yeah, there's a lot going on there. And obviously, I wish this had not warped in the packaging, but that's just where like it faces the outside bubble, and it's just how it is. But again, you can move it back, and with a little bit of convincing, we'll get it reasonably straight. And the folding top is kind of neat. Gives it a little bit of a feature. Something a little different. Little components on it. I don't think it has an opening hatch. By this point in the line, they kind of dropped those features in favor of more model features. They were shifting away from toys to more modern model style. The X1 over here is an early one, because it's very heavy metal, all metal. The V1 is actually part of the new Black series, because it's from the newer stuff, like Rebels. It's more plastic. It's also kind of neat because it has folding wings. And this is actually Baron Fell's TIE Interceptor, which is kind of neat. And it too is all metal. These all metal ones are actually very heavy for what you'd think. Let's just put some strain on the stand, I won't lie. But since I had it come in, I thought, let's talk about the TIE Defender. What do you think of my combining the Rebels canon with the TIE Fighter game Legends? I was trying to, I think they gel together since they're two different periods, and it's a unique enough ship that, why not? Or maybe you don't like it. I could see it is a little busy, but I think it'd be neat if they had done a gunboat or a missile boat. Anyway, if you have any questions or comments, please do post them. And as always, if you could, like, share, and subscribe. This is Misha. Catch you very soon. Next time.